Gaming on a retro console is awesome, but have you ever gone to boot up that console that you haven't turned on for a while, and then suddenly you get this screen? Well, that's because your old console either used a battery to help keep time that needs to be replaced, or in the case of the original Xbox, it used a capacitor to hold a charge long enough to be able to keep that time. Hey, what's up everyone? Game Dad here, and today we are back with the next part in my Ultimate Xbox series. Now, one of the most common things that happens with an original Xbox is that one of the capacitors on it actually starts to leak, and that means it can either cause damage to your board, make it not work, or at very minimum, it could make the clock not work, and you get that screen that I just showed you, where you have to set the time every single time you boot your console up. Well, good news is it is a super simple mod that you can do. It is called a clock capacitor mod, and what we're going to do today is actually take all of these capacitors right here, and we're going to replace that clock cap as well as a few other caps in here to help ensure that this thing has a long life moving forward. But before we dive in and get this Xbox taken apart to do this clock mod, please be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below, as well as that little notification bell. That way you get an alert every time I get a new video coming out. Now, let's go ahead and get this taken apart, get that board out, and get these capacitors replaced. Alright, so I'm going to use my trusty iFixit kit, and we are going to dive in and get this thing taken apart. Now, it does use a Torx bit on the bottom here, and I can never remember which one it is. I believe it's this one right here. So in the iFixit kit is the one labeled as a Torx T20H. And this has 6 bolts that you need to remove. You have a couple under the security tags, and then you have one under each of the feet. So you go ahead and get all these bolts out. And then under each foot, you need to get the ones under there as well. If you just peel up the outside edge, you'll be able to get under there. There we go. They are super easy bolts to deal with. I'm just going to go ahead and take the feet off these in general. And all it's really using is some double-sided sticky adhesive, so if it ends up wearing out over time, or if you don't have the feet anymore and you order some new feet, something like that, you can very easily just get it replaced. And put some double-sided sticky tape down there, and you'll be good to go. So getting these last couple, again, it's 4 in the corners, 2 underneath the labels. There we go. Got all of those out. Now we're going to flip this back over. We can pop that lid off. Now this is the clear shell mod that I did in the first video. It is holding up very nicely. Alright, now that I got that top shell off, we're going to go ahead and remove this little piece that allows me to have no cover on the disk drive. And then we're also going to move this out of the way, use a different size Torx bit right here, and we have a few little screws to take out. So we have one right here, and then we have a couple more down on the sides. Got one down right in here, and then we have another one down right here. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and disconnect a couple of these cables, make it a little bit easier to work inside of this right now. And then we are actually going to take the entire motherboard out in order to get everything replaced. And in a future video, we will actually have a hard drive mod, as well as an HDMI mod, and the Open Xenium mod. So we're going to go ahead and get this out of here. Got that power cord in the way. So we pop this out. There we go, hard drive out of the way now. There is part of the board. We need to get this whole drive assembly out of the way as well. So we're going to lift that up, get it disconnected. Disconnect that power, there we go. And now, as you can see here, we have the board. I'm going to go ahead and get this IDE cable out of my way. And the power cord out of the way as well. Now, we have the main board, and there are several screws that we need to take out in order to get these out, and then we are going to be replacing some of these larger caps right here. I'm going to go ahead and unplug the main power, And then we're going to start undoing all of these screws and get this motherboard out. All right, now I have a couple more cables here that I'm going to go ahead and remove just so I can get the board actually out of here. And luckily, these only fit one way whenever they go back, so you shouldn't have to worry about that too much. Go ahead and unplug all the little connectors, unplug the fan back here, and now we should be able to just lift this guy right out. Yep, there we go. And now we have the board out so that we can do the cap work on it. Now, with this particular board, this is a revision 1.6, and I know that because this video chip right here is the Excalibur chip, and that is only with the revision 1.6. And luckily, all of the caps are the same, but they might be caps in different areas. There might be different things you need to replace. For a revision 1.6, I'll be replacing C1E1, C1E2, C1F2, C1G10, and C2E2. And you'll be able to find all of those labeled on the board. Now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and flow a little bit of solder onto the bottom of those. Then I'm going to use my Hako, and I will get all the solder sucked up off of there so that I can install the new caps. And for this particular revision, I'm going to be replacing these 5 caps right here. It's all of those numbers I listed off are these 5. So we're going to go ahead and get those reflowed on the bottom. Anytime you're removing solder, you should always consider adding a little extra solder to it to help kind of reflow it. And then it'll make it a much easier time, whether you're using something like a Hako or solder wick or something like that. It'll come off much easier for you. Now, luckily, none of these caps have actually started leaking, so that means there isn't any damage to the board. But I did test it, and I did get the clock reset whenever I tried to actually go in and turn on the Xbox. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of these replaced. So I'm just reflowing the solder onto these spots and give it something a little bit nicer to grab onto when I go to remove the solder as a whole. You could also do this with some flux. I just happen to not have any extra flux on me right now. So I've gone ahead and reflowed all of those points, and now I'm going to use my Hako and get all of that extra solder sucked up out of there so that I can get these caps removed. All right, now as you can see, all of those caps have been removed. So now I'm going to go ahead and get all of these new caps installed. We'll get them tacked down, and then we can go ahead and get all of the ends snipped off. So I've got the new caps all resting in place, and I just bent over the little feet coming off of them, and now I'm going to tack those down with the soldering iron, and then I'll be able to go in with my flush cutters and get those snipped off. Alright, those are all soldered in, so now I'm going to take my flush cutters and get all the extra little bits trimmed off. Alright, now we can go ahead and put this motherboard back into its case and start the process of putting all 10 screws back where they go. So I'm just going to lift some of these cables out of my way, and then we will line everything up. And once it's all screwed down, then we'll go ahead and get all of the cabling all plugged back in. There we go, that's sandwiched down in place. Now we got to put 10 screws back in where they go. Alright, now that all of those are back in place, I'm going to go ahead and plug all of these connectors back in. And again, they are keyed, so they should only fit one way inside of your case. Alright, now with all of those connected back up, we're going to go ahead and put this ribbon cable and power cable back in where they go. And these are what power the actual disk drive. And now with those in there, we can actually put the disk drive back in. And just like everything else, it slides in to its specific spot. Everything should line up nicely, go right over its alignment pegs, and then all of this can get plugged back in. Now that that's all back in, I'm going to go ahead and put this little mount back in right here for the disk drive. And now we can throw the hard drive tray back into here. Okay, now that the disk drive is all in, we'll go ahead and put the hard drive tray in. And you want to make sure that as you are doing this, you go ahead and get the power cord routed on the side right here. Otherwise, there is a peg that will be kind of in your way when you try to do it later. So we got that routed. Now we're going to make sure this lines up with all of its little alignment pegs, and it will sit nicely down in there. Now you can go ahead and run this cable through its nice little tray. And I'm going to go ahead and get everything all connected back up. So we have our power cord for the hard drive, and then we have our ribbon cable for the hard drive. So that is in. And now what we need to do is go ahead and add in the screws that were holding all that down. So there's one underneath right here where the ribbon cable will be covering up. Make sure, as with everything, you back the screw off a little bit before you screw it back into the plastic. That way it doesn't strip it. And then we have two more up here. Go ahead and line those up. And send them in. And now that those are in, we can go ahead and flatten this cable back down. And we are ready to reinstall the top of the shell. So we're going to go ahead and slide this right over. It is a nice snug fit whenever it goes on. Now I will say, because this is an aftermarket shell, it is a very snug fit, and the pegs sometimes have a little bit of trouble lining up. But if you kind of just wiggle it around, you will get it back where it needs to go. So we're going to go ahead and flip this over now, and we'll get all of these bolts started. So again, we have the 4 in the corners, then we have the 2 that go underneath the actual labels. Then we go ahead and add the feet back in. These still got quite a bit of stick left to them, so not really worried about any of the adhesive on here. And there we go. That is back together and ready. And there you have it, everyone. The clock capacitor and just capacitor like upgrade mod is done to this Xbox. That means the next time this bad boy turns on, I set the clock, and I don't have to do that again any other time that it turns on for a very, very long time. So it is a pretty straightforward mod. You just have to get rid of the old caps, install some new caps, and you are good to go. Now, if you liked today's video, please let me know down in the comments below, and while you're down there, please be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, as well as that little notification bell. That way you get an alert every time I got a new video coming out. I still have a hard drive mod that I'm going to be doing to this. I'm going to be putting an SSD in this console. We have the Open Xenium mod that's going to be installed on here, which will really open it up. And then we also have the Make Megahertz HDMI mod. Plus, in the last video in this series, I mentioned that I would be talking to my buddy Thor about getting something special made for this, and he came through big time. So definitely make sure you get subscribed and hit that bell. That way you get an alert whenever that video comes out, because it's going to be awesome. Now, if you like what I do here and you are interested in helping to support the channel each and every month, then please consider becoming a channel member or head on over to patreon.com/GameDadShow, where for as little as $1 a month, you get early ad-free access to all of my videos, including getting your name in the end credits of every one of my videos, like the fine folks that you see above right now. Now, as always, I'm Game Dad. I thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you later.